And so what I did I did the entire Goldman internship standing up. So I was like, how am I supposed to stand and exercise?
Hello and welcome to the BLK podcast. My name is BLK Captial. I'm an equity analyst research at BLK. With me today is Emmanuel. He will be introducing our guests, but as a disclaimer, we just want to say that the opinions stated on this podcast are of the analyst and the guest and not of BLK. But without any further ado, Emmanuel is going to introduce our guests.
Hello, my name is Emmanuel Sante, and I'm a sophomore at Babson College. And I'm also equity analyst at BLK Capital Management. Today, our guest is Seven Richmond, the current president of BLK and the BLK Foundation. Seven is a seasoned finance intern at firms like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, to name a few. Seven is a junior right now concentrating in economics at Harvard University. Now, before we begin, we would also like to reiterate that the views mentioned and expressed in this podcast are purely our own and do not represent the values of BLK or its sponsors.
Yeah, so welcome, Seven. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me here.
Yeah. You're actually our first guest, so I think it's appropriate, you being the BLK president, being the first guest onto the podcast. But just tell us a bit about yourself, like your background, your interest in finance.
Goodness, my interest in finance. I knew I was going to study business when I got to college, but I did not do anything particularly noteworthy business-wise before I got to college. I did not know anything about the sell side or the buy side or anything about finance for that matter. All I cared about in high school was hooping. Like, I really just cared about being the best basketball player, football player, scholar, and really son, brother, friend I could be to the people around me from my area. And that's all that really mattered for me. And then when I got to college, I knew that I was going to study economics because I wasn't going to let my family's complete investment into me. They had to really make an overhaul, and they've saved a lot of money for the moment that I would go to college. And so I knew that that investment was going to be reaped in some way. So I knew I was going to study business or economics or something like that to make sure that my family's investment into me, that they would get even more than that than they expected. So that's where the real interest came from. And then when I finally got to Harvard, I just saw people that were older than me, who were Black, who were doing some really, really cool stuff. And I just followed their footsteps. So, the people that come to mind are Naomi Vickers, who was the president of BLK. She was president, two presidents before me. Angel Muhammad, who was the president before me at BLK. And of course, Angel and Noha as well. Angel, Noha, Drew Tucker, and Natalie Graham, all those people that were involved in BLK were people I looked up to when I was in college and just met them. And I was like, those are the kind of people I'm going to model my college career after. And honestly, the rest of it took care of itself.
Yeah. I feel like it's been working pretty well for you since you probably began as well. But how would you explain BLK to someone who's never heard of BLK or even knows what finance is?
Sure. So BLK is a 100% Black-owned, student-run, long-short equity hedge fund with over $100,000 in assets under management. What we do is we develop Black undergraduate talent through active money management. That's absolutely the sentence. And that also, in 2020, as was begun really during this year, and thanks to the work of this year's BLK Captial Executive Board, we've actually been able to create the BLK Foundation, which is a organization directly dedicated to providing financial support, and also non-financial support to Black-owned businesses with the dual mandate of supporting Black startups, paying forward our success to Black startups and entrepreneurs, and then giving back to small and medium Black-owned businesses around the United States, Europe, and Africa.
Yeah. Wow, that's really incredible. So what is your role as president of BLK entail in that big world that you just described there?
Yeah, so that's actually a very good question because my role as president has changed so much since I started as president of BLK. And now, with elections coming up next week, with it ending. So when my term as president began, I had been a part of the BLK executive board, but the executive board never actually met with each other. Like, never had meeting with each other. I didn't even know who the other executive members were. There was very little communication between the membership. And so, first thing that I made sure to do as the president of BLK was like, this is going to be a team effort. Like, this will. I don't have the capability to actually be able to do BLK by myself, and it wouldn't work if I tried to do that. And so, what my role as president when I started was simply getting everyone involved and communicating. And this is where I've really got to mention Rachel Gabriel, who's the current COO of BLK, who really took that in stride and hosted all the executive board meetings, made sure everyone was communicating on time. And so that's really where my job began, with establishing communication among all of BLK. And my second real priority was making sure we actually started investing. I had been a part of BLK for a while, and there was no transparency on the kind of assets that BLK was holding, or any of the actual movement of the money that was going on. So my next phase as president was to make sure that we were getting that active money management piece that I thought made us really special in comparison to other student-run clubs that exist out there. And so, those were my goals, and thankfully, with the help of portfolio manager Iola Zhao, the VPs of education Miles Nifiani, there were a lot of people that were very important for that step in creating the active money management piece and actually executing it that you see today. And then what really is important as president is probably the most important job you have to do is orchestrate the BLK Capital Management Fall Conference, the fall and the spring conference. So it's really on your shoulders to put that together. However, even though I had to of course it took a lot of work out of me. Have to give mad credit to Joel Stennett, our sponsorships chair, who made my job harder and easier by literally doubling our sponsorship base. So I had to work with a lot more people in that regard. He did an excellent job there with reaching out to sponsor firms and making them get included. And also, the CMOs, Avi Amuda and Genevieve Mansa, who did a sensational job of marketing the BLK conference, and actually doing things I would have no capability of doing, and really generating the hype and expertise about it. And actually, their real effort into the output of what that BLK conference was a huge reason why Henry Kravis actually agreed to join. And then, how, kind of after there, Henry Kravis actually requested a conversation with me, and which really started the BLK Foundation. So in a lot of ways, those people and their work that people didn't really recognize and was done by themselves, made huge changes for the BLK organization that y'all know today. So I can't act like being president has been the same job from start to finish. It's changed a lot. And now that I'm president, right now, I don't even consider myself the person who runs BLK. It's absolutely up to the current sophomores that are doing that. They've absolutely taken in stride. Not just the sophomores, but also Drew Aquai, who's actually handled a lot of the sponsorship positions lately. And of course, Susie and Agnika, the current chair of the Women's Initiative and head of marketing for the foundation, who's been very proactive in making sure that steps are getting started and done, and we're actually executing on the stuff that we want to see happen. So I've really seen a pretty cool transition from having to be super hands-off from the start, and now toward the end of my presidency, I'm kind of wow, this is what has been created. Everyone just takes it over now. It's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, even that transition from how BLK grew is really incredible. No, I was just gonna say my favorite aspect of BLK is the education program.
Cool.
And I think we've all been through it, or we're all going through it right now. So how would you guys say that education program has helped you learn, grow, personally, and what that has taught you?
Goodness. So first of all, Miles and Nifiani have done such a better job with the education program than I did when I was the VP of education. So shout out to them for the absolute monstrous effort they put into that. I would say for me, when I did the education program back when I was a first year, right, there was no real structure about it. No one would tell me when I had to do stuff, or I really it was different. Like, it was just it was like the first year of BLK existing, so there were so many things that like hadn't happened yet. So I really did the entire education program in like spring break. I actually like just sat in a library all spring break and did the BLK education program because it was like up to you whenever you wanted to finish it. And I learned a ton that week. I think that week I really learned the language of finance. It was like the first time I actually started to understand what these terms began to mean. I actually started speaking the language that people were addressing me to. And also it was the first time I was like building models. And at the end of my education program, I was able to present the company that I've worked on for that education program to some of our sponsors at the Morgan Stanley headquarters in the conference when it was in person. So that was a really cool experience for me there. I'd say my favorite part about it is it's definitely the modeling work that you get. So I think that's pretty rare to actually be able to do modeling work as someone who like hadn't even held a real full-time job in finance before. So I think that really separated me, and people in sponsor firms know like the kind of knowledge that BLK people have because of that education program.
Yeah, exactly. And what about you, Emmanuel? What has your experience been like?
When you were speaking on BLK being a 100% Black-owned student-run hedge fund, I've heard there have been like other similar organizations. I know one is in Cornell, one is in UCLA. Have you or BLK been in like contacts with them, or have talked with them, or plan to engage any type of like future endeavors with them?
Oh yeah, so Sheikh Kamara, he actually is a really good friend of mine. He started BLK Captial, which is the one you're referring to now. So far, those ones have only been for their own university. BLK exists for everybody, which I think is pretty cool. But I think that Sheikh has plans to make it national. I'd be shocked if they didn't. And so I think when it comes to those firms, like I think they're not actually. I don't think Black Gen is also. They're also not entirely Black. I think it's a minority owned, like Latinx and other minority people are part of that. So I think we're the only like actually like Black owned one. And we also don't have chapters, so we're like one body, we're one family, which I like about BLK too. But I hope that the next, since I know Sheikh pretty well, and of course, like anyone who's Black in this industry probably knows each other. Like, it's not a big world out there. So I'm sure that they're going to coordinate something together. I just hope they do it soon. I don't think it's like Martin Luther King. I'm not going to see the promised land with you, but I'm sure like the next board will be able to put something cool about it.
Yeah, that's cool. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. Emmanuel, you wanna speak about like your experience with the educational program, like as an analyst,
Yeah.
like what that has been like
So
for you?
so as I told you before, I go to Babson College, and if you know about Babson College, it's like a strictly businessy. Everything is business. All types of like accounting, finance, back to back, all day exams all the time. And this was one of the first times I feel like I've learned a lot in my time here. Like there's no snaps of absence, but I feel like it's one of the first times I've been actually like retaining some of the information I really learned and was able to apply it in many different ways. Like I was able to communicate better with the people in my groups and my sector groups. And overall, it was just an enjoyable time because like people within my sector, like EOL and others, like they usually like they follow up with you, they contact you at a time, they send you news articles, and they make sure that like you incorporate finance in your daily life, which is something that tends to not happen as much when like it's kind of like at school, it's like, oh, I'm going to class, I'm gonna learn this, but once I'm out of class, I kind of like turn it off. Versus in the BLK education program, it was like I'm using this in my day-to-day life like all the time because I have to keep in contact with all these people. I would really like to hear about your daily routine. Like, how do you go about your day as president, as a student at Harvard? What is it like? What challenges do you face? Anything?
Sure. So I try to be as intentional as possible in everything I do throughout the day. I take a page out of my sister's book and I actually try to like literally put in the Google Calendar like every minute of every day of what I'm doing. And so what I really shoot for, and if like no like events are going on or whatever, like I guess like a normal day, I always try to like get up at 7:30 regardless of if I have class or not soon, and then I pray, I do yoga. I'm very huge on the yoga thing, and then also I do that same routine. It's good for focus, and then after that, usually I'll probably have like a class or a meeting. some kind of classroom meeting, like between 9 a.m. to noon. And what I do for that is actually, I got rid of my chair that was in my room. I literally put it away. I don't even want it near me because I don't want to sit. I think it's a bad mentality to sit. I don't like doing it, so I stand throughout the entire day. And then if I have to sit down, if I get tired, I will sit cross-legged on the floor and I will eat because it's better for your back than it is for sitting on a chair. So I sit.
Yeah, I've noticed that in a couple of meetings we've been together. This guy is always standing.
Yeah, I always stand. I never sit for a meeting. One thing I'm scared about when I go back to regular coronavirus world is I have to sit down again, which is really a scary thought. Constantly trying to move. And then in the afternoon, I always exercise. So if it's good weather outside, I play basketball. If it's bad weather outside, I lift weights. That's usually by the tournament for it. But in the afternoon, I exercise at some point, and then I take a nap every day. In the afternoon, I take 30 to an hour nap. Regardless of anything that's going on, I block that in my calendar. I don't let people book meetings with me. I took a nap right before this podcast, actually. I constantly take a nap because it's very important that you have a time for your entire body to shut down in the middle of the day, because then it allows me to transition to now what is the work that I'm going to carry into the night going to look like. That's usually time where you're not meeting with people. It's just you and yourself. And it's what are you going to do with this free time that you have today? And so I really try to be intentional about, getting that homework done immediately as soon as I wake up. And then I play a ton of chess when I don't know anything about it. I go to chess.com. I'm learning new openings. I really enjoy the game of chess and exploring new things. And also I speak 5 languages. So I'm very intentional about keeping up to date with my languages. I try to watch different videos in Spanish, Portuguese, French, and Italian, just because I don't get the chance to speak those languages as often as I would like to, since everything I have to do is done in English throughout my day.
Nah, they got to get you on the next season of what's it called, Queen's Gambit.
No, I'm not. Yeah. I'm not nearly good enough at chess to go anywhere with it. I do it so I count my brain.
I love how you take mindful rests throughout the day. You're going outside, and then with the naps, and then I love how you're always standing and you're doing yoga as well. These are such great habits.
Yeah, and I know people our age often struggle with cell phones being a distraction, or figuring out what kind of routine they're going to go into once they get into college, and finding that balance is honestly really hard.
It's incredibly hard. And sometimes everything's got to go out the window because, what if one of my friends is having a really bad day and has to talk to me? What if, something happens, something comes up with BLK, which has happened many times, and, a sponsor needs to know something immediately. There's a lot of things that will come up sporadically, but if you can try your best to have things that are centered in your day, it really does make a world of difference for you, even with the uncertainty that happens throughout your life.
Yeah. So how do you, because, I feel like doing this is good, but you do it consistently, which I think is the really important part. So how do you make this consistent? How do you consistently incorporate this into your daily life or philosophy of life?
Oh yeah, you have to do little tactics. It's kind of like chess. I mean, it's if you actually want to win a chess game, you've got to initiate a tactic, and so you've got to do little tactics with yourself that actually make you do it. So when I do it with my phone, I actually it's my alarm, and so I put it a whole room away, so that I have to physically wake up and get out of bed to go get my phone and turn off the alarm, so that by then I'm actually standing, and then I can actually just go straight to my yoga routine. It's much easier to do that than if my phone was on my bedside and I could roll over and turn off the alarm, and I would want to sleep again. So I do those, I know myself, I know how I like to sleep. So I've got to do things that get me awake. One time, actually, I was so upset with myself for sleeping too much that I actually dumped 50 packets of Flamin' Hot Cheetos on my bed, so I would be uncomfortable as I slept, so I wouldn't sleep.
That is very unorthodox.
Yeah, it's incredibly unorthodox, but you've got to do little things to stop yourself from yourself. And so that's one example of it. And then also, you've got to eventually just enjoy it. Eventually, you just come to really relish in those little things. I really enjoy standing. I think it's great for my back. It's great for my health. It's great for my legs. And nowadays, when I sit, I don't feel comfortable. It's like now the things that were once, mainstream and maybe it felt difficult before, now those things are foreign to me. And now the things I've adopted into my routine are the things that actually make sense for my life.
And so what advice would you give people, like students first going into college, about starting a routine and how to get used to the college life? Because it could be a lot.
Yeah. I would say if you have a winter break where you have like nothing going on for about 2 or 3 weeks, I would say those would be your 2 or 3 weeks to start. I think the turning point for me was my sophomore year winter break when I started to figure this out, where I like really drilled into a routine and stuck with it no matter what. Because those 2 weeks of building good habits just stayed with me for the rest of it. It takes about 21 days to build good habits. I read that somewhere. So next time you can get a break, like your summer break or your winter break, and really establish good habits, take full advantage of it.
Definitely. And I feel like good habits only lead to like good opportunities, and you've had like a plethora of opportunities under your belt. So do you want to talk about like how you got certain internships, like how you prepared? Because you've worked from companies that are like based in Portugal to like Goldman Sachs, for example.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So I would say with these opportunities, right? I had a ton of help. None of them happened because I worked so hard myself that I earned them in some way. I think it's kind of stupid the way people try to sell to people that it's because you're not working hard enough that you're not getting the job. Like there are plenty of people I worked with at Goldman who got the job because their dad just worked there. So like it's not because you're a lazy person that you're not getting opportunities. I would say something that I actually found myself really fortunate for all of my opportunities. So I'll start with freshman year, I guess. I was looking for something to do in my summer, and I got accepted to the study abroad program in Spain. I was like really juiced about it. I was going to study Spanish throughout college. Like I was really excited for that. And then, my financial aid package came for the study abroad trip. I didn't get enough money for it. And I called my family back home. They were like, "Yeah, you can't do this," which I wasn't shocked about, but it was still kind of sad. However, I reached back out to my network and people I'd worked with back in Cleveland. And I was like, hey, there's a study abroad program I never got the chance to do because I couldn't afford it. And actually one of those people in Cleveland reached out to this firm out in Portugal. And he said, I got this really cool kid out studies at Harvard, studies at Harvard University. And just if you can give him a shot, it'd be great. And they called me back 2 weeks later and were like, would fair compensation be paying for your apartment living expenses for you to spend the summer abroad in Portugal with us? And so I literally learned Portuguese from scratch. I knew no Portuguese before that internship. I had to study it before I got there. I had to study it while I was there. And then actually, when I came back to Harvard, I kept studying it again. And then that's actually how I learned all of the Romance languages. Because after I learned Portuguese, I came back to Harvard, had a wonderful professor who knew all the Romance languages and really encouraged me to learn French and Italian. I still speak with him every week in a different language. And so that actually, what was once a thing where oh damn, I couldn't afford this opportunity, actually turned into now I'm a person that speaks 5 languages. It's something if you can use those opportunities where oh why me this time to actually turn into something good, those are the things that are going to differentiate you. And I think a reason why I got hired at Goldman wasn't because I was so good at financial modeling that they were wow, this kid is just gonna give me the best modeler ever. That's exactly why we want to work with him for 100 hours a week. I was told that literally my experience in learning Portuguese out for a law firm that I'd never met before, doing work I'd never done before, in a language I'd never spoken, was so different from anyone else applying that they were we want to work with that kid for 90 to 100 hours a week, not the person who's been drilled in a spreadsheet since the day they were born.
Now, I feel like your story really exemplifies what it means to really network. I feel like a lot of people, in our age, our situation, they kind of treat networking like a task. I have to check this box, I have to meet this person, and email him so I could get this job. But I was when we were talking to Tom, I don't know if we were there, but we were talking to Tom Shear from the Marquee Group yesterday. In the meeting, he said networking is really a lifelong career. It's so important because the person that you might be talking to will likely get you a job or might know somebody that could get you a job 5 to 10 years from now. and just it's just about being friends with people, and I find that really amazing.
Yeah, that's also something I've noticed. You just do it like very effortlessly. I mean, like when you're in the BLK community, it's so easy to like reach out to anybody. You're always just like a message away, and everything is so open and transparent. So that's like another great attribute of BLK as well. But just something that comes to mind is recently, I'm sure you saw this report that Goldman is like working their analysts at an insanely high level. Um, at your internship, is that like something you experienced as well? Because you just said like 90 to 100 hours. Um, like they want to spend 90 to 100 hours with you. So what was like your timetable like? Were you able to do like this type of daily routine when you were there?
Yeah. Simply put, no. So what I had to do at Goldman, it's much different when you're an analyst, right? So like during my time in school and BLK, right? Like I'm the president. I get to determine like when things will happen. Like people will have to accommodate 2 months. So it actually makes a lot of those things possible. But when I was working on the desk, there were so many things that I'd never seen before that I literally was bewildered of how to actually navigate that summer because it had to happen entirely virtually. I'd never done a virtual internship before. And so what I did actually, I did the entire Goldman internship standing up. So I was like, how am I supposed to like, stand and exercise when I'm supposed to work all this time? And so I actually, from literally, I would stand for like 15 hours a day. I would just never sit. And that's actually how I got my exercise in. Because if you stand for 16 hours a day, your legs will get sore, but they will also get strong. And so I had to work a lot, no doubt. I mean, the work came in waves. So there were some weeks where I was working 90 plus hours a week. There were also weeks where it was a little easier. It never got below 80 hours though. And then I would say like I had great, even when I messed up at the firm, like I had many instances where they were like, what is this internship? Like, why didn't you do this very obvious step? And so, but they could have blamed me for a lot of things that happened. Like they didn't. Instead, they allowed me to like work harder and get it right next time, which is really cool. And I got to work on live deals, which was different than all my other peers at other banks. Like a reason why you have to work so hard at Goldman is because they have so many clients and there's so much volume and things to do. So it's like, that's a good thing. It's a good thing for your summer. But I could see how like a full year of doing it could hurt because like if you're only doing it for like a summer, my internship actually got cut short. It was like 6 weeks, so I was able to go through it a little easier than my peers who were like full-time analysts having to go through it for like 2 years. So it can just be more difficult, depending on that circumstance. But overall, actually, people were quite supportive. I'd also say my mental health on payday was a lot better than my mental health on other days. If you surveyed me my mental health on the 31st every month, it was probably a lot higher than the other times during the week.
Yeah, definitely. I would assume that a job like that can be very draining. But I feel like I know people in our position, like going into like investments, asset management. I feel like we know what we're getting into. So like my view is like those kind of hours are to be expected. Like you're gonna be grinding from 8 a.m. to maybe like 12 a.m. on a.m. and come back tired and jump on it the next day over again. And you mentioned like your engagements with your like with the people that worked at Goldman. Like, can you describe what some of the networks like that you had access to? Like, were there people that you could easily like reach out to if you needed help or something, or was it very, would you say, cutthroat?
Well, the cool thing about working on a live deal is that, they better respond to you because you're actually the person working on the model and the presentation. So if they don't get back to you, it's all just not going to work. So they kind of have to respond to you and work with you. I was very fortunate that my associate actually went to Howard. So it was really comforting to have someone who was like from an HBCU background, who was Black, someone that I could like actually wanted to work. Like I wanted that person to succeed. And I could tell that he wanted me to succeed too. And so that meant a lot. And then I also like the other analysts I was working on these deal teams with, they were always a ping away. My intern class as well, we had a group chat where we could ask all our dumb questions too. And those are people that if I see them on the street, I'm gonna give them a high five because they got me out of some circumstances where people would just say terms in meetings. I'd be like, guys, what does that mean? And they would be able to actually tell me what was going on. So they always had my back in that regard. So even though I never got to meet them in person, which is a bummer, although I will be able to meet people this summer, they really had my back about it. Yeah, I'm very thankful for that, actually. If the people weren't as good as they were, that would have been a really hard
Yeah, definitely. So, you're working long hours. You're very dedicated to BLK. You're obviously also a student at Harvard. So what is your motivating reason when you get out of bed? Like, what motivates you? What is pushing you to be so coveted or like achieve this much?
Yeah, what makes you wake up and be ready to go, jump out the bed?
First of all, my grandmother, because if she can raise 7 Black children by herself, then survive Jim Crow, like there's no reason why I can't go out and take full advantages of the opportunities that she's paved the way for me now. So first of all, I come from a family where I'm pretty much the first person. I'm the first generation of my family to have the entire world right in front of me. For many generations, my family has not had any real chance or opportunity to, go to college, to generate wealth for themselves, to actually have the freedom to pursue what they love. And so I'm very blessed that I am actually the person who's born into that. That my father was actually able to make it out of a lot of hardship that I will never have to do. So there are definitely, I stand on the shoulders of giants. I don't know if you've heard that. But those people are very much a solid reminder of what I am here at Harvard to accomplish. And then beyond just those people that are around me, I have an excellent group of Black men that I live with on campus who are really, really high achievers. One of them is actually Keith Simmons, who's the healthcare secretary in BLK. My other friend is Noah Harris, who's actually the student vice president of Harvard University. Orvin Pierre, who's kids probably go to Harvard Medical School one day. And then my other friend Brandon St. Louis, who's an engineering genius. I live with these dudes, and I see the kind of effort they're putting in, right next to me. So it's having friends that are like that, makes it very obvious what I need to be doing for myself too.
Yeah, you surround yourself with positive energy, you definitely achieve positive things. And when you were speaking, it sounds like your grandmother is definitely like a role model to you. Do you have any more in your life that you would like to talk about?
Sheesh. I mean, yes. I think it would take a long time. I suppose, for sure, shout out to my parents and my sister. I mean, without a doubt. My mom had to go through a lot of stuff to give birth to my sister and I, and my dad too. So I'm thankful for them for making it very apparent that success would be expected and demanded out of me, but never we're so to the point where we're not going to love you if you don't succeed. So I'm very thankful for them being present in my life in just the right way, which I don't think a lot of parents are. I feel very fortunate to have had 2 parents that actually pretty much pulled it off as best as they could have.
Definitely, yeah. Parents can be a great influence. Is there any advice you would give to anyone that's listening, that wants to be in your position, that wants to be the president of BLK one day, or that simply just wants to join BLK? What advice would you give to someone like that?
My goodness. I would say, first of all, find people ahead of you that are doing what you want to do. You may not know exactly what you want to do, but if you can find people ahead of you that are living that life that like you're like, okay, that's someone that I could see myself doing that. Like you need to find those people kind of as soon as you can. It's really helpful if they're like already in your college. That's why I'm very fortunate to have gone to Harvard with a lot of people like that. Now I would also say if you're actually going to lead anything, you've got to drop your ego and recognize that you're actually not the best person to do everything. You're just absolutely not. Like, shout out to Ade Akande, like he's the CSO. We're actually, run the recruiting process for people the past 2 cycles. If I had like decided that, I was gonna, for some reason decide to take charge of that, like that would have been stupid because that person's actually like really good at doing that. So you need to like understand that not everything is up to you, and that you're gonna have to just trust people that anything an organization you're actually gonna run is going to succeed.
Definitely. That's some good advice.
Now, I have another question. This one might be a little. So, as president of BLK, right, you've likely spoken to many executives and human resource people. And I know in a lot of these presentations and meetings, they make a point to highlight their diversity, right? We have a very diverse workforce. We're looking for more Black talent. So, in your opinion, what company have you encountered that has exemplified like diversity to like almost near perfectly? Like when you think of them, it screams like, "Wow, this is a safe space for young Black talent."
Well, I mean, that would be Fifth Century Partners because they're actually a Black-owned private equity firm that invests in Black businesses. So if you're like talking about like a safe space for Black people to join, like that would be where you would go. When it comes to like the actual large bracket sponsored with BLK, I think that's sort of what you're asking for. Goodness. Yeah, I suppose I can kind of tell just by the engagement of like people. I can only give my experience based on the people that I'm in contact with. But the people that I've been in contact with at JP Morgan are just some of the realest Black people like I have. Like there are some really, really cool people there. And then Vanguard too. They're not. I actually haven't met a lot of Black people at Vanguard, but the people that are there are some really, really good people too. You can just tell that they really, really care. I would say like my experience at Goldman Sachs has been like I've never felt at Goldman that like my race put me at a disadvantage at any point in time. I do understand that like there's the general expectation that we put on ourselves as Black people to like, be perfect, be twice as better as the people around you to make sure that people don't evaluate you worse than peers just because you're performing at the same level as them. So I would say I'd really highlight JP Morgan and Vanguard. Like they're sensational people. But like all of the BLK sponsor firms, like if you're sponsoring BLK, like you're doing something right. And so like they have it in some capacity to care. And yes, of course, what happened in 2020, they were given no choice. But you have to like, I mean, your expectations can only be so high for institutions that have never accepted Black people for a very long time. If you're going to inherit the space, you just have to understand that like it's going to happen. Like you're going to experience people that like are not very conducive to your upbringing and not very sensitive to who you are. But I would say actually like engaging with BLK is a great start because all the sponsors I hope that y'all have been able to engage with. I hope you've seen that like they really actually do care. Like they actually do want y'all to join them. So I hope that experience is helpful for y'all getting exposed to all these things.
Yeah, definitely. So how much of your success would you attribute to like actual luck, and how much would you attribute it to like hard work?
I see you've got a Nipsey poster back there, so I actually like something that I think like Nipsey said something to the point of like you know, hard work plus patience. Like that's what it's all. That's dedication. Hard work plus patience, and you need to work hard for when like you finally do get blessed with your opportunity. You have to be willing to work hard and get absolutely nothing out of it. Like you have to understand that some of the work you're going to put in, no one will ever recognize. No one will ever like actually care that you did it. No one's ever going to recognize you for doing it. But you have to be like the work in itself has to bring joy to you, or like you won't actually really find fulfillment. So what I would say is like for all the opportunities I've gotten, that is like a straight blessing. Those are absolute straight blessings that were far out of my control and were given to me because people way before me had made sacrifices I will never understand for me to have the ability to receive them. But my ability to work hard is why those opportunities that I was given have actually turned into such success.
Yeah. No, that's a great answer, and I love how you tied that in with Nipsey as well. So this will be our final question. But what do you think the biggest mistake you've learned from is, and how do you come back from like making mistakes
Biggest mistake. Oh my goodness.
or opportunity to grow? We can rephrase it like that. What is the biggest opportunity?
There's so many. Oh my goodness. I'm trying to think. I think
You don't make too many mistakes.
no, I made too many. It's like I'm trying to figure out which one is like the one to choose. Like which mistake has the honor of being mentioned.
I mean, you can name a few as well if you like.
Sure, I'll give a variety of examples. So
Yeah.
when I first put the BLK fall conference together, I made plenty of mistakes, and it stressed me out. Like it really, really stressed me out. Like I was getting very nervous a lot because sometimes I would I didn't know that a sponsor wanted this event to also happen in addition to like judging stock pitches. I didn't know that they were expecting this kind of time with the membership, and these other sponsors were like suggesting this kind of time. And so, the conference really taught me you can't put too much pressure on it. Like you have to show yourself grace sometimes. That even if the conference ended up going fine. Like the conference ended up going really well, and we had a great. I think all the sponsors enjoyed it, all the students enjoyed it. It ended up being okay. But throughout it, I was really, really stressed out, and because I wasn't really giving myself grace. I was demanding complete perfection on myself the entire time, and that's not a reasonable thing. So it's okay to give yourself grace when you mess up, which I would say that's really important. And then probably maybe it wasn't a mistake, but I learned a lot from not having the chance to study abroad when I wanted to study abroad. I learned a lot from that experience of being denied something that I was really looking forward to, and then actually being able to turn what felt like what was it's tough that it won't be able to happen for me into something that's actually now really defined part of my college experience and actually cultivated myself in ways that I never would have expected myself to be capable of when I began college. So those are probably two things I'd really highlight.
Definitely. No, those are great lessons to learn from as well. But thank you so much for joining us today. It's an honor to have you on as our first guest. It was really a pleasure. Emmanuel, is there anything else you want to add?
I just really appreciate what you just said about failing, learning from your mistakes, because I've personally been in a position where I had wanted to start something on campus, and it didn't go as planned, and it really turned me down. So I appreciate what you said, and I was able to learn from that. as you did, and it just taught me a lot about patience and making sure certain things follow through as planned, and fact checking yourself and not being too hard on yourself as well. Because I feel like as black students, we feel like we always have to be perfect in everything we do because we feel like we're always being watched.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate everything that you said, and like you said, thank you for taking the time with us here today and coming to speak with us.
Thank you all for taking the initiative and making this happen. This is really cool.
Definitely.
Have a good day.